Story 1. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the glow of my laptop illuminating the dim room as I scrolled through Craigslist. It was late, too late really, but the excitement had me hooked. I was finally ready to buy my first car, an act that felt like a rite of passage for someone my age. My heart raced as I clicked on a listing that promised a great deal. The headline read, 2005 Honda Civic, low mileage, great condition, $3,500. My fingers danced over the keyboard as I opened the ad, my mind racing with possibilities. Perfect, I muttered to myself, forgetting the time. My parents had always warned me about online transactions, but this felt different. I was no longer just a kid, I was about to make a significant purchase. I leaned closer to the screen, absorbing every detail. The car in the pictures gleamed under the sun, its paint practically sparkling. It was everything I could hope for, affordable, reliable, and most importantly, mine. I shot off a message to the seller, Marcus Lane, my heart pounding with anticipation. Hi, I'm really interested in the Honda. Is it still available? When can we meet? I hit send, my fingers trembling slightly. Almost immediately my phone buzzed. Hey Ethan. Yes, it's available. I can meet you tomorrow at the Westfield Mall parking lot, around 3 p.m. Sound good? I couldn't help but grin. He seemed friendly enough, and the location was busy enough that it eased my worries a bit. Sounds great. See you then. I replied, and as soon as I hit send, I felt a wave of excitement wash over me. The next day, I spent the morning anxiously preparing for the meeting. I checked my phone repeatedly, ensuring I had everything I needed. My driver's license, a small stack of cash I'd saved up for months, and a sense of newfound independence. I could almost envision myself driving the Honda, windows down, music blasting, freedom stretching out before me like an open road. As I drove to the mall, however, a strange unease settled in my stomach. The sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something I didn't fully understand. I brushed it off as nerves. After all, buying a car was a big deal. I pulled into the busy parking lot, scanning the area for Marcus. Cars whizzed by, families laughed, and the faint scent of popcorn wafted through the air from the mall's entrance. There he was, leaning casually against a silver Civic that looked just like the one in the pictures. He appeared relaxed, his arms crossed, but as I drew closer, I couldn't help but notice how his eyes darted around, as if he were searching for something, or someone. Hey Ethan. Great to meet you, he called, his voice warm and inviting. I offered a smile, trying to suppress the growing knot in my stomach. Thanks for meeting me, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The car looks amazing. Yeah, it runs like a dream. Want to take a look? He gestured toward the vehicle and I stepped forward, examining the car closely. It did look good, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As we talked, he pointed out the features, casually mentioning how well he'd maintained it. I just need to sell it quickly, you know how it is. Moving out of state and all. Right? I said, nodding along. That makes sense. Just then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from my best friend, Jake, asking how the meeting was going. I quickly typed back a thumbs-up emoji, trying to hide my unease. Everything good? Marcus asked, noticing my distraction. Yeah, just my friend checking in, I said, forcing a smile. So, are you the original owner? Yeah, bought it brand new, he replied, his eyes glinting as he spoke. But it's time for someone else to enjoy it. As we continued to chat, the sense of foreboding settled deeper within me, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. I glanced around the parking lot, half expecting something to interrupt our conversation, but people moved about, oblivious to the tension building between us. Let's take it for a spin, Marcus suggested, his smile broadening. I hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. But I wanted this car and I didn't want to seem overly cautious. Sure, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. As I climbed into the passenger seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping onto a stage where I didn't know my lines, and the act was about to begin. I parked my car in the dimly lit parking lot, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The glow of streetlights cast long shadows, making the lot feel more desolate than I had anticipated. As I stepped out, I caught sight of him, Marcus Lane, leaning casually against the side of a sleek silver sedan. His posture was relaxed, but there was something in his eyes that hinted at a wariness, as if he were scanning the surroundings for something, or someone. Hey, you must be Ethan, he called out, straightening up with a friendly smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Thanks for coming out. I know it's late. Yeah, no problem. I'm just excited to see the car, I replied, forcing a smile in return as I approached him. My stomach churned slightly. I had done my research, but there was still an unsettling feeling creeping in. Good deal, right? He said, gesturing toward the car. I promise you it's in great condition. You won't find a better price. I nodded, trying to focus on the car rather than the creeping unease. So, what's the story behind it? It belonged to my sister, he explained, his tone casual, but I noted a flicker of something, regret, perhaps? She moved away and I just need to get rid of it. Figured I'd help someone out in the process. As I walked around the vehicle, inspecting it closely, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Have you had many inquiries? I asked, trying to keep the conversation flowing. Nah, just a couple, he said, his eyes darting briefly to the edges of the parking lot. People are flaky, you know? They see the price and think it's too good to be true. Yeah, it's definitely a steal, I replied, my voice lacking the enthusiasm I had hoped it would convey. I mean, it looks well taken care of. Trust me, it is. You can take it for a test drive if you want, he offered, a hint of eagerness creeping into his voice. Before I could respond, the atmosphere shifted. I noticed a group of figures emerging from the shadows at the far end of the parking lot. They wore dark hoodies pulled tightly around their faces and my heart sank. Marcus, who are they? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stiffened, his casual demeanor evaporating in an instant. Stay close to me, he instructed, his voice low and urgent. Don't move. Panic surged through me as the group drew nearer, their intentions clear. What's happening? I shot at Marcus, indignation mixing with fear. Are they your friends? No. Just stay behind me, he snapped, but it was too late. The group had closed in, their faces obscured, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of dread. Get on the ground, one of them shouted, brandishing something metallic that glinted menacingly under the streetlights. Chaos erupted. I felt a sharp shove against my back, and before I could react, I was thrown to the ground.
The sound of shouting and the crack of gunshots shattered the night. My heart raced as I tried to process what was happening. I squirmed, trying to find a way to shield myself from whatever was unfolding around me. Marcus, I screamed, my voice lost amid the chaos. What is this? But he was gone, slipping into the shadows as if he had never been there at all. My mind raced with disbelief and betrayal. I had come here for a car, for a new beginning, and now I was lying on the cold asphalt, surrounded by danger and deception. The world around me blurred as I struggled to breathe, each heartbeat pounding louder than the last. I felt the rough pavement beneath me, the metallic taste of fear mingling with the air. My thoughts spiraled. I couldn't comprehend how a simple car sale had turned into this nightmare. Help! I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. But the only response was the echo of my own voice, swallowed by the darkness that loomed over me. I lay there, the asphalt cold beneath me, the chaos of the parking lot fading into a distant echo. A sharp pain stabbed through my side, and I gasped, feeling the warmth of my own blood seeping into my clothing. The sound of sirens pierced through the haze of confusion surrounding me, but it felt like they were coming from another world, distant and unreachable. Ethan, stay with me, buddy, a voice barked nearby, breaking through the fog. It was a paramedic, his face a mask of urgency, as he crouched beside me. I tried to focus on his words, but the pain was overwhelming. I could barely comprehend the chaos of the scene, the way people shouted, the flashing lights of police cars reflecting off the cars parked haphazardly around us. Who did this? I managed to croak, my throat dry and scratchy. I could still picture Marcus's face, that friendly smile that had turned sinister in an instant. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Just hang in there, Ethan. Help is on the way, the paramedic reassured me, applying pressure to my wound. Can you tell me what happened? I tried to speak, but my breath came out in labored gasps. My mind was racing, flashing back to the moment Marcus had leaned against the car, his demeanor relaxed, almost inviting. He sold me a car, I stammered, the words feeling surreal. But it was a trap. Just focus on breathing. You're going to be okay, he said, but doubt crept into my mind. I was losing consciousness, the edges of my vision darkening. Just before everything went black, I caught a glimpse of the paramedics lifting me onto a stretcher, the world around me spinning into darkness. I awoke in a sterile hospital room, the beeping of machines surrounding me like a haunting melody. My body felt heavy, as if it were made of lead. I turned my head slowly, wincing at the pain that shot through me. A nurse was adjusting the foredrip, her movements practiced and calm. "Hey there, sweetheart. You're awake," she said softly, her voice soothing. "I'm just going to check your vitals, okay?" Where am I?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're in the hospital. You were shot, but you're safe now," she replied, her eyes filled with compassion. "The doctors are taking good care of you. Do you remember what happened?" I closed my eyes, trying to piece together the fragments of my memory. Marcus Lane. He sold me a car. Then there were gunshots. My heart raced as the memories flooded back, the terror of that night crashing over me like a wave. The nurse nodded, jotting something down on her clipboard. "Detective Mitchell will be here shortly to ask you some questions. You're a key witness in this case." "Detective Mitchell?" I repeated, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. "What do you mean?" "Your shooting is part of a larger investigation. There have been several similar incidents in the area," she explained, her tone serious. "You might have information that can help us." I nodded, my mind racing. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Marcus had seemed so friendly, so eager to make a sale. Was he just a pawn in a game I didn't understand? Minutes later, the door creaked open, and a woman in a dark blazer entered, her expression focused and determined. "Ethan Parker?" she asked, her voice authoritative yet calm. "That's me," I replied, my heart pounding. I could see her notepad, pages filled with notes and details. "I'm Detective Sarah Mitchell," she introduced herself, pulling a chair closer to my bed. "I need to ask you some questions about what happened last night." "Okay," I said, steeling myself. "I'll do my best." "Take your time," she encouraged. "Can you tell me everything you remember about Marcus Lane?" As I recounted the details of our meeting, my heart sank deeper with each word. I hadn't just walked into a trap. I had almost lost my life because I trusted someone I didn't know. He seemed normal. "Just a guy trying to sell a car," I said, frustration lacing my voice. "But what he did, it doesn't make sense." Detective Mitchell listened intently, her brow furrowing as I described the moments leading up to the chaos. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened. We're seeing a pattern with these Craigslist sales," she said, her voice steady. "I need you to remember every detail, Ethan. It could help us catch him." I nodded, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on my chest. "I'll try," but he looked so trustworthy. "I never thought. Trust is a dangerous thing, especially in situations like this," she replied, her eyes piercing. "But we'll get to the bottom of this. You're not alone in this fight." As she scribbled notes, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps I could help catch Marcus, but the thought of what had almost happened still haunted me. I was alive, but I was also marked by this experience, a chilling reminder of the fragility of trust. The sterile smell of antiseptic greeted me as I slowly drifted back into consciousness, the hum of machines surrounding me like a haunting lullaby. My eyelids felt heavy, and with a great effort, I pried them open. Blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights, I was greeted by the sight of a small hospital room, its white walls closing in on me. I tried to shift, but a sharp pain shot through my abdomen, forcing me to gasp. "Ethan?" A voice broke through my foggy thoughts. Detective Sarah Mitchell stepped into view, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "You're awake. Thank goodness. We've been worried about you. What happened?" My voice was raspy, each word a struggle. I winced as I tried to sit up, but Sarah gently pressed me back down. "Take it easy," she said, her tone soothing yet firm. "You were shot during the incident. They've stabilized you, but you need rest. Can you tell me what you remember?" I swallowed hard, the memories flooding back like a tidal wave. The parking lot, the car, Marcus. His face loomed large in my mind, a specter of betrayal. Marcus. I breathed, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. He sold me a car. It was a trap. Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean? What do you remember?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to recount the details. He was friendly, seemed genuine. But there was something off, something I couldn't quite place. He mentioned a deal that was too good to be true. I thought I was finally getting my first car, you know? Did he say anything else? Anything that might help us find him? She pressed, her pen poised over her notepad. He mentioned he was in a rush. Something about needing to get rid of the car quickly. It all seemed so weird. I paused, the memory of his eyes scanning the parking lot like a hawk, making me shiver. It was like he was watching for something or someone. Sarah scribbled furiously, her brow furrowing in concentration. I need to speak to anyone who was nearby during the shooting. There were witnesses, but their accounts are conflicting. You might be the key to putting this together. Wait, I interrupted, straining to sit up a little more. What about the people who attacked us? The masked guys? We're still investigating. But it seems like Marcus has a history of violent crimes. We're trying to connect the dots, she said, her expression grave. Ethan, I need you to think hard. What else do you remember? I closed my eyes, trying to sift through the chaos of my thoughts. He seemed nervous, like he was trying to hide something. And there was a moment, right before everything went dark, I saw a look in his eyes. It was almost predatory. Predatory? She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. That's an important detail. Did you see anyone else with him? No, just the two of us. Then the shots. I can't remember anything after that. My heart raced at the thought of being so close to danger, so unaware of the trap I had walked into. Ethan, you did well. You survived, she said, her voice laced with a mix of admiration and respect. But we need to catch him before he strikes again. You might be in danger if he thinks you could identify him. My heart sank at the realization. What if he comes after me? What if he knows I'm alive? We have officers on high alert, and I'll make sure you're protected, she assured me, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. But you need to stay strong. Your testimony could help us catch him. He's out there, and we need to find him before he can hurt anyone else. As she spoke, the gravity of the situation settled over me like a dark cloud. I had thought I was simply buying a car, but now I was entangled in something far more sinister than I could have imagined. What about my family? I asked, my voice trembling. What if they're targeted because of me? We'll do everything we can to keep them safe, Sarah promised, but I could see the weight of the investigation pressing down on her. You just focus on getting better. We'll handle the rest. As she left the room to make calls, I lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights buzzed as I replayed the events of that night in my mind, the feeling of betrayal settling like a stone in my gut. I had trusted Marcus, and now I was left wondering just how deep his deception ran. How could someone I barely knew turn out to be such a monster? I was determined to find out, not just for myself, but for everyone else who might fall victim to the killer buyer. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting an eerie glow in the sterile hospital room. I lay there, the sounds of machines beeping in synchrony with my heartbeat, a jarring reminder of my reality. Detective Sarah Mitchell stood by the door, her face a mixture of determination and concern. I could see the fatigue etched into her features, but her eyes burned with a fierce resolve. Ethan, she began softly, stepping closer. I need you to think back. Anything else you remember about Marcus? Anything at all? I swallowed hard, the memories of that night crashing like waves against the shore of my mind. He kept talking about how easy it would be to get the car. I replied, my voice hoarse. It was all too good to be true. I should have known. Good instincts, Ethan. You're lucky to be alive. A lot of people wouldn't have made it, she said, scribbling notes in her pad. I could feel my pulse quicken. Was it pity in her voice? Did you find him? I asked, my heart racing. Marcus. She hesitated, glancing at the floor as if weighing her words. We're working on it. We've got a lead. I nodded, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. The last image of Marcus's face was imprinted in my mind, a mask of calmness that belied the chaos he had unleashed. Suddenly, my phone vibrated on the bedside table, breaking through the tension in the room. I reached for it, my hands trembling. Who's that? Sarah asked, leaning in closer. I glanced at the screen, my heart plummeting. It was a message from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone immediately. Hey, Ethan, you still alive? I hope you're enjoying your little vacation at the hospital. Just so you know, this isn't over. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It's him, I whispered, staring at the screen as if it might somehow reveal more than just words. I need to see that, Sarah said, her voice now sharp and commanding. I handed her the phone, my stomach twisting with anxiety. She read the message, her expression hardening. We need to trace this number.
He's taunting you, Ethan.
This means he thinks he's still in control.
Control.
The word echoed in my mind, a bitter reminder of the events that had unfolded. What does he want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Power, Sarah replied, her eyes cold and focused. And fear. He thrives on it, just like the others we've seen in his shadow. As she continued to analyze the message, my thoughts drifted back to the night of the shooting. The chaos, the fear, the realization that I had been drawn into a deadly game I didn't understand. Ethan, she interrupted my thoughts. We have surveillance footage from the parking lot. It shows Marcus and some of his accomplices fleeing the scene. Accomplices? I echoed, my mind racing. He had help. Yeah, and it seems he's been using multiple aliases to avoid capture. Sarah's voice was steady, but I could see the frustration simmering beneath the surface. We believe he's linked to a notorious gang operating out of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. My heart sank as I imagined the grim reality of what lay ahead. Are you going to raid it? We're planning to, she said, her tone leaving little room for doubt. But it's going to be dangerous. We need to be cautious. I didn't respond, my mind torn between the desire for justice and the fear of what might happen next. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming call, pulling her attention momentarily. I watched her take the call, her expression shifting from concentration to urgency. Okay, we're on our way, she said before hanging up. She looked at me, a hint of worry crossing her features. Ethan, we need to move. They just got intel that Marcus might be at the warehouse right now. My heart raced. What if he sees you coming? Then we'll be ready, she replied, her voice firm. But listen, if you hear from him again, let me know immediately. He's playing a dangerous game. As she turned to leave, I felt a surge of desperation. Detective, please. I need this to end. I can't keep living in fear. She paused, meeting my gaze with a fierce intensity. We'll do everything we can to bring him down, Ethan. You're not alone in this. With that, she was gone, leaving me alone in the sterile room, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The shadows seemed to creep closer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was always just a step ahead, lurking in the darkness, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The air was thick with tension as we prepared for the raid. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a relentless drum echoing the chaos of the past few days. Detective Mitchell stood beside me, her expression a mix of steely determination and underlying concern. We had finally tracked Marcus Lane to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. My body was still recovering from the trauma of the shooting, but the urgency of the moment pushed me to be present, to witness whatever twisted outcome awaited us. Ethan, are you sure you want to be here for this? Mitchell asked, her voice low, almost drowned out by the muffled sounds of officers communicating through their earpieces. I need to see him, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I need to understand why this happened. The team moved in synchrony, a well-oiled machine, as they breached the front door. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense, anxious about what we might find inside. My mind raced with images of Marcus, the man who had lured me into this nightmare. Clear, came the shout from one of the officers as they swept through the entrance. The adrenaline surged, and I stepped in behind the detectives, feeling the weight of every moment I'd spent in this nightmare pressing down on me. What we found inside was far worse than I could have imagined. The dim light flickered and revealed a hidden room off to the side, its door slightly ajar. Mitchell motioned for the team to hold back as she approached the entrance cautiously. My heart dropped as I caught a glimpse of what lay within. Photos covered the walls, Pictures of me, my family, and others who had fallen victim to Marcus's twisted games. Each face was marked with the same raw terror I had felt the night of the shooting. I stepped closer, my breath hitching in my throat. I felt sick, a wave of nausea washing over me as the reality of the situation seeped in. "Ethan," Mitchell said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." I couldn't respond. There were no words for the horror I was witnessing. Just then, a scuffle erupted in the corner of the room. Marcus was there, tied to a chair, his face bruised but smirking as if he found some sick pleasure in the chaos. Well, he sneered, eyes glinting with malice. "Look who decided to join the party." "Shut up, Marcus," Mitchell snapped, stepping forward, her badge gleaming in the dim light. "You're under arrest for multiple counts of assault, attempted murder, and a slew of other charges." He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You think this is over? You really believe you've won? Ethan here was never supposed to survive." I froze, his words slicing through the air like a knife. "What do you mean?" I choked out, my voice trembling. Marcus leaned forward, relishing the moment. "You were just a pawn, kid. A piece in a game far bigger than you can comprehend. Your brother. He orchestrated the whole thing." My heart plummeted. "Jake? No, he wouldn't. But he did," Marcus taunted, his smile growing wider. "He wanted revenge for what you did. You think family means anything in this world? He sold you out, Ethan. You were expendable." I staggered back, the revelation hitting me harder than any blow I'd received. "You're lying," I shouted, but a part of me was already believing it. Memories flashed through my mind. Jake's strange behavior, the late-night phone calls, the secrets I never questioned. "Do you really think he cares about you? You're just a means to an end," Marcus continued, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "And now, you've played your part perfectly." Mitchell stepped in, her voice firm. "Enough. You're going away for a long time, Marcus. We've got enough evidence here to put you behind bars for life." He sneered at her, but then his expression shifted to something far more sinister. "You think you understand the game? The pieces are still moving, detective. You've only scratched the surface." As the officers moved in to take him away, I felt my world crumbling around me. The trust one had in my brother was shattered, replaced by a gnawing sense of betrayal. I stood there, lost in a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, and a profound sadness for the innocence that had been stripped away. "Ethan," Mitchell said, her voice softer now, "we'll get to the bottom of this. You're not alone." But as they led Marcus out, his twisted grin lingered in my mind, a reminder that the darkness was far from over. I was left standing in that room, haunted by the truth and unsure of where to turn now, caught in a web of deceit that threatened to swallow me whole. Story 2. Scrolling through Craigslist late into the evening, my heart raced with each new listing I encountered. I was on a mission to find the perfect apartment, one that could be my sanctuary, a space to call my own as I navigated the chaos of university life. The dim light of my laptop screen illuminated my face as I clicked on yet another ad. Most were either too small, too far away, or simply out of my budget. But then, there it was, a stunning apartment in the heart of Minneapolis, complete with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and an inviting living room that seemed to beckon me in. "Sarah, you've got to see this." I called out to my roommate, Jessica, who was sprawled on the couch, engrossed in her phone. I turned my screen toward her, and her eyes widened in disbelief. "Wow, that looks amazing. Are you kidding me? And the rent is so reasonable," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "I know, right? It feels like a dream," I replied, my fingers dancing over the keyboard as I quickly sent an email to the listed address. "I can't wait to check it out. I just hope it's not a scam." We both laughed, knowing that in this digital age, the line between reality and deception could be perilously thin. But as the hours passed, I couldn't shake the excitement bubbling within me. I imagined hosting friends, curling up with a book on a rainy afternoon, and even decorating the place with my favorite art pieces. A couple of days later, I found myself standing in front of the apartment building, a quaint brick structure with ivy creeping up its sides. I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach as I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. Michael Hargrove, the man behind the listing, was supposed to meet me here. I had exchanged a few emails with him, and he seemed friendly, eager to show off the place. When he arrived, my initial apprehension melted away. Michael was charming, with an easy smile and a warm demeanor. "Welcome. I hope you find everything to your liking," he said, gesturing for me to follow him inside. The moment I stepped through the door, I was captivated. The living room was bright and airy, sunlight streaming through large windows that overlooked a bustling street. The decor was elegant, with plush furniture and tasteful artwork adorning the walls. "Wow, this is incredible," I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad you like it," Michael replied, his eyes sparkling with pride. "I've put a lot of effort into making this place special." As we walked through the apartment, he pointed out various features: the modern kitchen, the spacious bedrooms, and the chic bathroom. But there was something that sent a shiver down my spine: a locked door at the end of the hallway. It stood out like a dark secret, the handle gleaming ominously in the light. "What's behind that door?" I asked, unable to suppress my curiosity.
"Oh, just some storage space. Nothing you need to worry about," he replied too quickly, a flicker of unease crossing his face. I nodded, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling that settled in my chest. After a thorough tour, we returned to the living room where I found myself signing the lease. My excitement overshadowed any lingering doubts. "Congratulations, Sarah. This is going to be a great home for you," Michael said, clapping me on the back as I handed over the signed documents. "Thank you. I'm really looking forward to moving in," I replied, my smile bright but my heart still heavy with that strange sense of dread. As I left the apartment, I glanced back one last time. The door at the end of the hallway loomed large in my mind, a reminder that nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. Little did I know that this beautiful apartment would soon become a place of nightmares, shattering my sense of safety and trust in ways I could never have imagined. As I stepped into the apartment for the second time, a mix of excitement and dread coursed through me. The initial thrill of finding this place had been overshadowed by the unsettling vibes I had felt the first time I was here. Jessica, my best friend, stood beside me, her eyes wide as she took in the lavish decor. "Wow, Sarah, this place is incredible. You really lucked out," she exclaimed, her voice echoing in the high ceilings of the living room. I forced a smile, trying to mirror her enthusiasm, but my eyes were drawn to that locked door at the end of the hallway. "Yeah, it's nice," I replied, my voice lacking the excitement I wanted it to convey. "But, I don't know, Jess. There's something about it that feels off." Jessica shrugged, dismissing my concerns. "You're just overthinking it. It's a great deal and the landlord seemed really nice, right? Plus, you're getting a killer location." I nodded, but the uneasiness lingered. "I guess so. Let's check out the rest of the place." We wandered through the rooms, Jessica chattering about how she could see herself living here, while I tried to shake the feeling that something was not right. Later in the week, I was alone in the apartment, the silence almost deafening. I had convinced myself that I needed to get used to the place, to create a sense of home. As I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, I heard the soft click of the doorknob turning. My heart raced as I glanced toward the door. "Michael," I called, recognizing the voice that answered. "Hey, Sarah. I just wanted to check on the utilities and make sure everything is running smoothly," he said cheerfully as he stepped inside. Okay, I didn't know you were coming by," I replied, a hint of uncertainty creeping into my voice. He waved it off, a charming smile plastered across his face. "No worries. Just doing my job. Mind if I take a look around?" "Sure," I managed, trying to match his enthusiasm. But as he walked through my space, I couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. There was something unsettling about the way his eyes darted around, as if he were assessing more than just the utilities. After a few moments, he turned to me, his expression shifting. "You know, Sarah, you're really lucky to have found a place like this. Not many people get such a great deal. I can help you with anything you need," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "Thanks, I appreciate that," I replied, my stomach tightening. Then, without warning, his demeanor changed. The charm faded, replaced by a predatory glare that sent chills down my spine. "You think you can just move in here and play house? This isn't a game." My heart raced as I realized I was alone in this apartment with a man whose smile had turned into something menacing. "What are you talking about?" I stammered, backing away from him. He stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You don't get to ask questions. You're going to learn your place. Panic surged through me and I turned to flee. I darted toward the door, but he was quicker, grabbing my arm and yanking me back. You're not leaving, he hissed. I fought against him, adrenaline fueling my struggle. Let me go, I shouted, desperate for escape. My mind raced as I searched for something, anything to defend myself. In that moment, I spotted a lamp on the nearby table. With all my strength, I swung it at his head. It connected with a sickening thud, and for a moment I thought I had the upper hand. But he was relentless, shoving me back with a force that knocked the wind out of me. I stumbled, trying to regain my footing, but he lunged again. I ducked just in time, and my heart pounded as I rushed toward the kitchen. I needed to find a way out, to escape this nightmare unfolding in my supposed safe haven. Don't think you can hide from me, he shouted, his voice growing angrier. I glanced around frantically, looking for an exit, feeling the walls closing in. This was supposed to be my home, and yet it felt like a trap that had sprung shut. I couldn't let him win. I had to fight for my life. The chill of the police station's fluorescent lights pierced through the fog of disbelief that enveloped me. I could still feel the echo of Michael's violent laughter reverberating in my ears, a stark contrast to the sterile environment surrounding me. As I sat in the waiting area, I tried to steady my racing heart. The walls were painted a dull beige, a color that felt just as lifeless as the conversations happening around me. I had just reported the attack, and now I was left to wait, heart pounding in my chest, for the detective assigned to my case. Sarah Thompson? A deep voice broke through my thoughts, pulling my attention away from the flickering overhead lights. I looked up to see a tall man in a navy suit, his expression serious but not unkind. He introduced himself as Detective Jameson, and as he guided me into a small office, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. Sit down, please, he said, gesturing toward a chair opposite his desk. I obeyed, clutching my bag tightly on my lap as if it could shield me from the reality of what had happened. Can you tell me what happened from the beginning? He asked, his pen poised over a notepad. I took a deep breath, forcing the memories to the forefront of my mind, the details still raw. I found an apartment on Craigslist and it seemed perfect. The landlord, Michael, was charming at first. I signed the lease. My voice trailed off, the weight of my naivety crashing down on me. Did he say anything unusual? Anything that seemed off? I shook my head, frustration bubbling up inside me. No, not at first. But there was this locked door at the end of the hallway. I kept feeling like something was wrong. I should have listened to my instincts. Instincts are powerful, Detective Jameson said, nodding. And they're often our best defense. Can you tell me about the attack? I recounted the details of that horrifying day, my voice trembling as I described how Michael had shown up unannounced, claiming he needed to check the utilities. He turned. He wasn't the same person anymore, I stammered, tears threatening to spill. He grabbed me and I thought I was going to die. Detective Jameson listened intently, his expression a mix of sympathy and determination. You're incredibly brave for fighting back and escaping. We need to find him before he does this to someone else. As I spoke, I could see the gears turning in his mind. There have been similar reports in the area, he continued, his voice steady. You're not the first victim, Sarah. The word struck me like a slap. I had thought I was alone in this nightmare. What do you mean? I pressed, feeling a cold dread settle in my stomach. There's a pattern, he explained. Michael Hargrove has a history. He's been linked to multiple incidents over the past few years. Different victims, different cities, but the same MO. We're gathering information from those who have come forward. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I wasn't just a victim of a random attack. I was part of a larger, more sinister story. What can I do? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Stay strong and stay safe. We'll need your help identifying him if we find him. And we want to make sure you're not alone in this. We can connect you with support groups for victims of similar crimes. I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for those who had come before me, for the faces I had yet to see, and for those who might fall victim next. As I left the station, a sense of urgency pulsed through my veins. I couldn't shake the haunting images of the victims I hadn't met, their stories buried beneath the surface of my own. I needed to know more, to uncover the truth behind Michael's deception. It was my duty now, not just to myself but to anyone else who might be trapped in his web of lies. Hey, Sarah. A familiar voice called out as I stepped outside. It was Jessica, my closest friend. She rushed over, concern etched on her face. I heard what happened. Are you okay? Not really, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm just trying to process everything. Do you want to talk about it? She offered, her eyes searching mine for answers. I hesitated, wondering how much I should share. They caught wind of a pattern. There are more victims. I need to find out who they are. Jessica's brow furrowed. That sounds intense. But you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. I appreciated her support, but a lingering doubt gnawed at my insides. Could I truly trust anyone? The apartment that had promised new beginnings now felt like a trap, a reminder of how quickly safety could be stripped away. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, I realized that my journey for justice was just beginning. I sat at my cluttered desk, the glow of my laptop illuminating the chaos of my thoughts. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in around me as I scrolled through article after article, my heart racing. Each click revealed another chilling story, another woman who had fallen prey to Michael Hargrove's web of deceit. The more I learned, the more I felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. I was no longer just a victim, I was a seeker of truth, a hunter in the shadows of his past. Sarah, you okay? Jessica's voice broke through my trance, pulling me back to the present. She leaned against the doorframe, concern etched on her face. I hadn't even noticed her enter. Yeah, just reading, I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I'm trying to find a connection, something that links all of his victims together. Want me to help? She offered, stepping into the room, her enthusiasm contagious. It was a welcome distraction from the darkness that had begun to envelop me. Sure, I said, gesturing to the papers strewn about. I could use a fresh set of eyes. I'm starting to think there's a pattern here. We spent hours sifting through documents and online forums, piecing together the fragments of lives that Michael had shattered. Names, addresses, and even the same phrases repeated in each of their stories began to emerge. It was like connecting the dots of a twisted puzzle, and with each connection, a clearer picture formed. Look at this, Jessica exclaimed, pointing at a name on the screen. This woman was attacked in a building just a few blocks from your apartment. Same MO too, he pretended to be the landlord. Why didn't I see this before? I muttered, my mind racing. If only I had connected the dots sooner, maybe I could have warned them. Jessica placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You're doing everything you can now. We need to keep going. We're onto something. The atmosphere shifted as we delved deeper into our investigation. Every detail we uncovered felt like a step closer to confronting Michael, but the danger loomed larger with each revelation. I could almost feel his presence lurking just out of sight, a predator waiting to strike again. As night deepened, the shadows in my apartment seemed to grow longer, the air heavier. I glanced at the locked door at the end of the hallway, the door that had once seemed merely mysterious but now felt like a gateway to a nightmare. Do you think he has something behind that door? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, Jessica replied, her brow furrowed. But we can't just go barging in there. We need to be smart about this. Smart, right? I echoed, my mind racing with possibilities. What if we could find out what's behind it? Maybe there's something that links him to all of this, something that proves he's guilty. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, she said, trying to rein in my growing excitement. We need to gather evidence first. We can't risk getting caught. Okay, but we can't ignore it either, I insisted, feeling a surge of determination. I need to know. For all of us. Jessica sighed, her expression shifting from concern to admiration. You're brave, you know that? But let's focus on the journal. If we can find one of his victims, maybe they have a clue that leads us to something more concrete. I nodded, but the locked door continued to haunt me, a palpable reminder of the fear that had seeped into my bones. Let's find that journal, I agreed, feeling the urgency of our mission coursing through me. With renewed vigor, we searched online for any leads that might help us locate a previous victim. As the clock ticked away, the sense of urgency grew. I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, that Michael was still out there lurking, ready to strike again. Sarah, Jessica said suddenly, her voice sharp with focus. What if we set up a meeting with someone who knows him? Someone who might have crossed paths with him before. Are you suggesting we go undercover? I asked, my heart racing at the thought. Not undercover, but maybe we can pretend to be interested in renting a place. It could work, she proposed, her enthusiasm contagious. I chewed on my lip, considering the risk. It's risky, but it might be our best shot. We can't let him get away again. Then it's settled, Jessica said, determination lighting her eyes. Let's do this. As we plotted our next move, the shadows in the apartment felt less suffocating. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a potent mix of fear and resolve. We were on the hunt, and I was ready to uncover the truth no matter the cost. I sat in the cramped living room of my apartment, the weight of my fear pressing down on my chest like a heavy stone. Jessica was beside me, her eyes flickering with a mix of excitement and anxiety as we prepared for what felt like the ultimate showdown. Armed with the knowledge we had pieced together about Michael's past, we were ready to confront him. "Are you sure about this, Sarah?"
she asked, biting her lip. "What if he doesn't show up?" I shrugged, trying to mask the tremor in my voice.
He will.
He's arrogant enough to think he can charm his way out of anything. I glanced at the clock, my heart racing with each passing second. We'd set the meeting for 7 p.m., and it was already 6:45. I could almost hear the ticking of the clock echoing my mounting anxiety. The plan was simple: lure Michael into the apartment, make him believe I was still interested in the lease, and then let the police swoop in. Jessica had made the call, and they promised to be nearby, ready to move at the first sign of trouble. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "We've got this," I said, more to convince myself than her. Just then, a knock echoed through the room, sharp and startling. My stomach dropped. "That's him," I whispered, panic rising. Jessica nodded, her eyes wide, and motioned for me to answer the door. I approached slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. I opened it to reveal Michael, his charming smile plastered across his face. "Sarah, so good to see you again. I was just in the neighborhood," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His confidence radiated through the room, but beneath it, I could sense a predatory edge. "You wanted to talk about the apartment?" "Yeah, I did," I replied, forcing the words out. "I've been thinking it over, and I have some questions." My voice wavered, but I pressed on, knowing that this was the moment we had been waiting for. "Questions?" "Of course." Michael leaned against the wall, his posture relaxed. "Fire away." I hesitated for a moment, the enormity of what I was doing washing over me. "I want to know why you have that locked door at the end of the hallway. It's kind of unsettling." His smile faltered for the briefest of moments, and I caught a glimpse of something darker in his eyes. "Oh, that? Just a little storage area. You know how it is in old buildings." He waved his hand dismissively, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Right." I pressed on, my heart racing. "And I found some things about you, Michael. Things that don't add up." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. I exchanged a glance with Jessica, who was watching from the corner of the room, and I knew it was time. Just as I was about to speak again, the door burst open, and the police stormed in, their uniforms a stark contrast to the dimly lit apartment. "Hands in the air," one of the officers shouted. Michael's demeanor changed in an instant. He spun around, his expression morphing from charming to furious. "What the hell is this?" he yelled, his voice thick with anger. "Michael Hargrove, you're under arrest." Another officer moved to grab him, but he pushed past, his eyes wild with desperation. "You think you can trap me here? You don't know who you're dealing with." In a flash, he lunged toward me, and I instinctively stepped back, heart racing. "Get away from her," Jessica shouted, moving to intercept him. The chaos erupted as the officers tried to restrain him, but he fought back like a cornered animal. "Sarah, get out of here," Jessica yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. I froze for a moment, terror paralyzing me as I watched the struggle unfold. "Why do you think you can just walk into my life, huh?" I shouted at Michael, my voice trembling with both fear and anger. "You think you can just ruin people and get away with it?" He looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. You're just a pawn in this game." With a sudden burst of strength, he broke free from the officer's grasp and sprinted toward the door. "No!" I screamed, but it was too late. He was gone, disappearing into the hallway just as the police regained their footing. "After him," one of the officers shouted, but I felt a wave of defeat wash over me. I had wanted to confront him, to make him face the consequences of his actions, and yet here I stood, powerless as he slipped away once again. Jessica turned to me, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "Are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer. I nodded, but the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. I had faced him, but it hadn't gone how I had hoped. The moment felt like a hollow victory, and as the officers began to regroup, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. I stood in the living room of the apartment that had turned from a dream into a nightmare, my heart still racing from the events of the past few days. The walls, once adorned with my hopeful visions of a new life, now seemed to close in on me, heavy with the weight of betrayal. I glanced at my phone again, hoping for some sign that this was all just a bad dream. But the reality was far worse than I could have imagined. The news had come through a brief message from the police. Michael had been apprehended. Relief washed over me momentarily, but it was short-lived. I still felt the gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right. I needed to talk to Jessica, my friend who had been my rock through this chaos. But as I dialed her number, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. When Jessica arrived, her demeanor was unsettlingly calm. "Hey, Sarah," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips that I found unnerving. "How have you been holding up?" "I've been okay, I guess," I replied, my voice wavering. "But I can't shake this feeling that something is still off. I need to know more about Michael's history. Did you find anything?" She shrugged, but there was a flicker in her eyes that I didn't like. "I'm sure the police will handle it. They've got him now, right?" "Yeah, but what if there's more? What if he's not working alone?" The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. Something in Jessica's expression shifted. A shadow passed over her face. "Sarah, you need to trust me. We'll figure this out together," she said, stepping closer, her tone almost conspiratorial. "But let's not dwell on the past. We can't let it consume us." I took a step back, feeling the distance between us grow.
What do you mean by that?
"You sound like you know more than you're saying." Her smile faded, and in that moment, I felt a chill shoot down my spine. "I suppose I do," she said, her voice turning cold. "You see, I was never just your friend in this. I had my reasons for getting close to you, Sarah." "What are you talking about?" I breathed, my pulse quickening. "You're scaring me. Michael and I had an understanding. I thought if I played my part well enough, I could get out of this mess. But you," she trailed off, her eyes narrowing. "You've made things complicated." "Complicated how?" I demanded, my heart pounding against my ribs. "What did you do?" In that moment, everything shifted. Jessica's expression hardened, revealing the truth I had been blind to. "I was supposed to help him lure you in, but you're smarter than I gave you credit for, and now I have to clean up this mess." "Jessica, you can't be serious," I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty apartment. "You're working with him?" "It was supposed to be easy, Sarah. You were supposed to be just another victim," she hissed. "But now you've become a wild card." I stepped back, feeling the walls close and even tighter. "You're insane. You were my friend." "Friends? That's rich," she scoffed. "You thought you could trust me? Just like you trusted him?" My mind raced, piecing together the moments I had brushed off, the way Jessica had always been just a little too interested in my plans, my fears, my dreams. "You were playing me from the start." "Exactly," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "But you're smarter than I thought. And that's why I need to finish this." Suddenly, in her frantic movements, she stumbled against a wall, triggering a hidden latch. I gasped as a trapdoor swung open beneath her, revealing a dark space below.
No.
"Jessica, wait." I screamed, but it was too late. She lost her footing and fell, her cries echoing as she disappeared into the darkness. I stood frozen, the reality of the moment crashing down on me. Jessica, my friend, had orchestrated this whole nightmare. As the police sirens blared in the distance, I realized the apartment that had promised me freedom had become a prison for both of us. Trust, I understood now, could be the most dangerous illusion of all. I stepped back from the open door, my heart heavy with the knowledge of betrayal. This was no longer just about Michael. It was about the web of deceit that had ensnared me, and the painful truth that I would have to confront in the aftermath of it all. Story 3: The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon as I sat across from Tom in our favorite coffee shop, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around us. It was a small, cozy place, the kind where everyone knew each other, and the barista always had a warm smile ready. We were both buzzing with excitement as we sipped our drinks, a couple of dreamers ready to leap into the unknown. "Can you believe it?" Tom said, his eyes wide with enthusiasm. "A job on a farm. Just think about it, fresh air, hard work, and a chance to get away from the city. It's perfect." I nodded, trying to match his energy. "Yeah, man, it could be just what we need. A fresh start, new opportunities. And the pay? It's pretty good for something that sounds so simple." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. "You think it's too good to be true?" Tom waved his hand dismissively.
Nah.
"It's Craigslist, sure, but people do this all the time. We'll be fine. Just two guys looking to make a living. What's the worst that could happen?" His unwavering optimism was contagious, and I found myself smiling despite the tiny nagging doubts at the back of my mind. We had always been the adventurous type, ready to take on whatever life threw at us. I took another sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through me, and we began to discuss what we'd do with the money we'd earn. Plans for trips, new hobbies, and maybe even a little celebration when we got our first paycheck danced around the table. As we pulled up to the farm later that afternoon, however, my excitement began to wane. The dirt road leading to the property was lined with overgrown weeds, and the buildings loomed ahead like forgotten relics of a better time. "This place looks different from the pictures," I muttered, glancing at Tom, who was staring wide-eyed at the scene before us. "Yeah, it's a bit run down, but that just means we'll have to work harder," he replied, trying to sound optimistic. But I could sense the unease creeping into his voice, just like it was in my gut. The large barn, with its peeling paint and sagging roof, seemed to cast a shadow over the entire property. "Come on, it's just a bit of character," he added with a nervous chuckle. We parked the car and stepped out, the dry earth crunching beneath our boots. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the distant rustling of leaves. Just then, a figure emerged from the barn, a tall man with unkempt hair and a wide, unsettling grin that sent a chill down my spine. "Welcome. You must be Jake and Tom," he said, his voice smooth but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "I'm Earl. Glad you could make it out here." Thanks for having us," I replied, trying to mask my discomfort. Tom stepped forward, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Earl. We were just talking about how excited we are for the job." Earl's grin widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, you boys are in for a real treat. Lots of work to do, but it's going to be worth it. Trust me." I exchanged a glance with Tom, and I could see the uncertainty mirrored in his expression. There was something off about Earl, something that felt wrong, and it took everything in me not to back away slowly. Where do we start?" I asked, forcing a smile, trying to shake off the creeping dread. Earl chuckled softly, and the sound made my skin crawl. "Right this way. I'll show you the barn. It's where you'll be spending most of your time." As he turned to lead us, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was not what we had signed up for. But Tom was already following Earl, and I didn't want to be the coward who backed out. So I took a deep breath and followed, hoping that my instincts were simply playing tricks on me. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would change everything. As Earl led us toward the rundown barn, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. The air grew thick with a tension that settled in my stomach like a lead weight. The barn loomed ahead, its wooden structure creaking ominously in the wind. I glanced at Tom, who marched beside me with an eager grin plastered on his face. "This is it, Jake. Our big break," he exclaimed, oblivious to the unease gnawing at my insides. "Yeah, but it just feels weird, you know?" I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom waved my concerns away.
"Smart man.
"We're here for a job. Think of the money. We can finally get out of that crummy apartment." He pushed open the barn door, and it groaned in protest. Dust motes danced in the fading sunlight as we stepped inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with the smell of old hay and something acrid. "Welcome to your new workplace," Earl said, his voice dripping with enthusiasm that felt forced. He gestured around, but all I could see were broken tools and cobweb-covered machinery. You'll be fixing up this place in no time, he continued, his smile widening, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for comfort. I forced a smile back, but inside I felt a flicker of doubt. So, what exactly are we doing here? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Earl's eyes glinted with something I couldn't quite place. You'll see soon enough. Just a little hard work, and you'll be set for life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the atmosphere shifted. The barn, once just a dilapidated structure, now felt like a cage. The sounds of nature faded, leaving only an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. I exchanged a glance with Tom, whose initial excitement was now overshadowed by uncertainty. "Hey, do you hear that?" Tom said, his brow furrowing. I strained my ears, and that's when I caught it, a rustling from the woods beyond the barn, followed by a low growl that sent chills racing down my spine. "Maybe we should go check it out," I suggested, my voice trembling slightly. "Or maybe we should just stay put," Tom replied, his insistence growing firmer. "We can't just leave. This job could change everything for us, Jake." "Tom, this doesn't feel right," I insisted, my heart pounding. "We came out here for a job, not to get eaten by whatever's out there." "Stop being such a chicken," Tom snapped, his patience wearing thin.
You're always so quick to run away. What if this is our chance? Look, I'm just saying we should be cautious. This isn't what I expected, I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. Cautious? You mean scared? His voice rose, echoing off the barn walls. You're letting your imagination run wild. We're fine. Are we? I challenged, because I feel like we're in over our heads. Let's just go back to the car and, before I could finish, Earl reappeared at the entrance, his demeanor suddenly shifting. What's all this commotion about? His tone was casual, but there was an edge to it that sent a shiver down my spine. Just discussing the job, I said quickly, hoping to diffuse the tension. Earl stepped closer, his presence looming. You two are here for a reason. Don't forget that. He paused, his gaze piercing into mine. You need to trust the process. It's going to be worth it. I swallowed hard, feeling trapped between Tom's blind optimism and Earl's unsettling words. As night fell, the temperature dropped, and the rustling outside grew louder, more aggressive. A low growl echoed through the barn again, and I felt my heart race. Tom, we need to leave. Now, I urged, my voice urgent. But he shook his head defiantly. I'm not going anywhere. You can't let fear control you. Fear? This isn't fear, Tom. This is instinct. I exclaimed, desperation creeping into my voice. The woods around us seemed to close in, and I felt a primal urge to escape. Just give it a chance, Jake, he pleaded, his eyes pleading. In that moment, I realized we were at a crossroads. One path leading deeper into a nightmare, the other towards safety. But with Tom unwilling to budge, I felt the weight of the decision press down on me. I could feel the tension in the air thickening, almost suffocating me. Tom and I were standing in that decrepit barn, the walls warped and the smell of mildew invading my senses. Jake, we can't just leave now, Tom insisted, his voice laced with desperation. We need this job. We can't let fear rule us. His eyes flickered with a mix of determination and hope, but I could sense the underlying panic. Tom, this place gives me the creeps, I shot back, my heart racing. Did you see that guy? Earl? There's something seriously off about him. I glanced around, the shadows of the barn seeming to close in on us. My instincts were screaming at me to get out, but Tom wasn't ready to back down. Maybe it's just the atmosphere, man. We've come this far and we'll make good money. Just think about it. Tom's words were earnest, but they only made my anxiety spike. I could hear the night creeping in outside, the distant rustling of leaves stirring my unease. Before I could respond, a slow, deliberate clap echoed through the barn, slicing through our argument. Earl stood there, a twisted smile plastered across his face, eyes glinting with malice. Bravo, boys. Such passion, he taunted, stepping forward, his silhouette dark against the faint light filtering through the cracks in the wood. What do you want? I managed to choke out, my stomach churning. Earl's grin widened as he reached behind his back. What do I want? Oh, it's not what I want, but what I need. In one swift motion, he revealed a gleaming knife, its blade catching the light in a way that made my skin crawl. I need some entertainment, and you two are just perfect for the role. Panic surged through me and I turned to Tom, who stood frozen, shock washing over his face. "Run!" I shouted, my voice breaking as I bolted towards the exit. The world outside felt like a distant dream, but I had to escape. I could hear Tom's footsteps behind me, but the sound of Earl's laughter echoed in my ears, chilling my blood. I burst out into the night, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I glanced back and my heart dropped. Tom was still inside, struggling against Earl, whose sinister laughter rang out like a death knell. "Jake." Tom's voice pierced through the darkness, filled with terror. "Help." I hesitated, torn between the instinct to save my friend and the primal urge to flee. But I couldn't just leave him. I sprinted back toward the barn, my feet pounding the ground, adrenaline propelling me forward. "Tom?" I yelled, but the night swallowed my voice. The door was half open and I could see shadows shifting inside. "Jake, please?" Tom's voice was faint, desperate. I pushed through the door, but Earl had him pinned against the wall, the knife gleaming wickedly. I felt a surge of rage and fear, but I knew I couldn't take on Earl alone, not like this. "Let him go, you monster!" I shouted, my voice quaking. Earl turned to me, his eyes narrowing, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "Ah, the brave hero returns," he mocked. "But you're too late." With that, he twisted the knife and I saw Tom wince, his breath hitching. My heart raced as I searched for anything to use as a weapon. "Run, Jake. Get out of here." Tom shouted, his voice strained with pain. I could see the fear mixed with determination in his eyes. I was losing him and it felt like the ground was slipping beneath my feet. But I couldn't just leave him. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I charged at Earl. I was fueled by desperation, but Earl was faster. He swung around and in a flash I found myself stumbling backward, the world spinning as I dodged his grasp. "Go!" Tom yelled again, and that was all it took. I turned and bolted into the night, the sounds of struggle behind me fading away. The darkness enveloped me, but I didn't stop running. I could hear Tom's cries still echoing in my mind, haunting me with every step I took. I needed to find safety, but all I could think about was the look on Tom's face as I fled, and the terrible realization that I might never see him again. My legs felt like lead as I sprinted through the trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The panic coursing through me was raw, and I fought against the suffocating fear that threatened to consume me. I couldn't let it win. I had to survive. I stumbled into the small town, my heart pounding like a drum, the night air thick with the scent of damp earth and desperation. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows as I made my way toward the local police station. My mind raced, replaying the horrifying events of just hours before. I could still hear Tom's screams echoing in my ears, a haunting melody I couldn't shake off. As I pushed open the heavy door of the station, a bell jingled, drawing the attention of a few officers stationed inside. Their faces shifted from boredom to shock as they registered my disheveled appearance. Clothes torn, face smeared with dirt, and a wild look in my eyes that must have screamed terror. "Hey there, buddy, you okay?" One of them, a burly man with a graying beard, approached cautiously. I need help." I gasped, my voice cracking. "There's a man, he's a murderer. I just escaped from his farm." The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Slow down. Take a breath," the bearded man said, guiding me to a nearby chair. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "Tom and I answered a job ad on Craigslist. We thought we'd found a way out, a chance to start fresh. But when we got there, it was a trap. The guy, Earl, I hesitated, the memory of Earl's psychotic smile flooding my mind. "He has a gun. He captured Tom." I ran. "Craigslist, huh?" Another officer chimed in, skepticism dripping from his voice. "You sure you didn't just get lost out there?" "No. I'm telling you, it's real." I insisted, desperation clawing at my throat. "He's done this before. There are others missing. You have to believe me." The officers exchanged glances again and I sensed their doubt. "What's this guy's full name?" the bearded man asked, pulling out a notepad. "I don't know his last name. He lives on a farm outside of town. Please, you have to help me find him." "Okay, we'll need to look into this," the officer said, jotting down notes. "But you need to calm down and give us all the details." I recounted everything I could remember, the dilapidated buildings, the unsettling sounds from the woods, the argument with Tom, and the moment Earl had revealed his true intentions. As I spoke, I could see their expressions shift from skepticism to concern, but doubt still flickered in their eyes. "All right, let's get a couple of officers out there," the bearded man decided. "But we'll need you to come with us to show the way." As we left the station, I felt a mix of hope and dread. What if Earl was still there? What if he had already hurt Tom? The thought twisted in my stomach like a knife. The ride to the farm was uneventful, save for the tension hanging in the air. Silence enveloped us, broken only by the sound of the engine humming. I stared out the window, watching the landscape blur past, my mind racing with what could happen next. When we arrived, the farm loomed before us, dark and foreboding under the pale moonlight. The officers exchanged glances, apprehension written on their faces. "Stay close," the bearded man instructed as we stepped out of the car. I led them toward the barn, my heart pounding louder with each step. "It was in there," I said, my voice shaking. "That's where he took Tom." We approached the barn cautiously, the creaking door sending a shiver down my spine. "Stay behind us," one of the officers warned as they slipped inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, a relentless drum echoing the fear that coursed through me. "Tom?" I shouted, my voice cracking against the silence. "Tom?" No response came, only the rustling of hay and the distant creaking of the barn. The officers swept through the space, their flashlights illuminating the shadows but revealing nothing. "Clear," one of them called out, but I could feel that something was off. "Where is he?" I demanded, panic rising in my throat. "He has to be here." "The place looks abandoned, man," another officer said, frustration evident in his tone. "Maybe you were mistaken." "No. I know what I saw," I shouted, anger and fear intertwining, making my voice tremble. "Earl is a psychopath. He's done this before." As the officers continued their search, I felt a chill creeping up my spine. Doubt flooded my mind, and I wondered if I was too late, if Earl had already taken Tom somewhere far away. I was determined to find answers, to uncover the truth behind the man who had turned our lives into a nightmare. My thoughts raced as I followed the officers, desperate to make them believe me before it was too late. I couldn't let Tom down, not like this. I had to find a way to reveal Earl's dark past, to piece together the truth behind the job offer that had led us all to this horrifying fate. I spent the next few days in a haze, piecing together the fragments of my encounter with Earl, my mind racing over the implications. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear Tom's cries echoing through the darkness, a haunting reminder of what I had lost. But I couldn't dwell on it, I had to do something. I had to find Earl and bring him to justice. Sitting at my desk, scattered papers and my laptop cluttered the surface, I felt a surge of determination. I had started gathering evidence. Old newspaper clippings, online posts, and anything that could link Earl to his dark past. My fingers flew across the keyboard, fueled by a desperate need to uncover the truth. I found articles about missing persons cases spanning over a decade, all with threads tying back to that cursed farm. Earl had been operating under various aliases, each time luring unsuspecting souls with false promises of work. "Jake, you need to be careful," my friend Mark warned over the phone. "This guy sounds dangerous. Let the police handle it." "I can't just stand by, Mark. Tom is still out there, and the cops don't even seem to believe me half the time. I need to do this." My voice trembled with frustration. "Fine, but at least let me come with you. We can figure this out together." I hesitated, the weight of guilt pressing down on me. "I can't put you in danger. You didn't see what I saw. Earl isn't just some creep, he's a predator." "Maybe so, but you're not alone in this, Jake. You don't have to carry the burden by yourself." His words hung in the air, a lifeline I desperately wanted to grasp but feared would only lead to more pain. Eventually, I agreed to meet Mark at a diner on the edge of town. As we sat in a booth, I laid out what I had found. "Look at this," I said, sliding a newspaper clipping across the table. "This guy has been active for years, and it all leads back to that farm." Mark scanned the article, his brow furrowed. "This is insane, Jake. We should show this to the police. Maybe they'll take us seriously now." "I just wish I had a way to lure him out into the open," I confessed, frustration bubbling inside me. "Why not set a trap? If he's still active online, we can create a fake job listing, see if he bites." I stared at him, the thought both thrilling and terrifying. "You really think that'd work?" "It's worth a shot. If the police are involved, they can catch him red-handed." We devised a plan, drafting a job listing that mirrored the one that had lured us in. I felt a mix of dread and resolve as we posted it. I knew the risks. What if he saw right through it? What if he decided to come for me instead? Days passed and I tried to keep my mind occupied. Each moment felt like an eternity. Then just when I was about to lose hope, my phone buzzed. An email notification flashed across the screen, and my heart raced as I read the message. "Interested in the job? Let's talk." "Mark," he responded. I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. He rushed over, peering at my screen. "This is it. We need to get the police involved right now. They can set up surveillance. I called the authorities, my voice trembling as I explained the situation. After some back and forth, they finally agreed to take action. Officers arrived at the diner, setting up a plan to catch Earl in the act. "Remember, Jake," the lead officer warned, "stay alert. He's dangerous and we don't know how he'll react." The day of the meeting arrived and I was a bundle of nerves. We set up in a secluded area near the farm, the officers hidden in the shadows ready to pounce. I waited, my heart pounding as the minutes dragged on. What if he doesn't show? I muttered to Mark. "He'll show," he replied confidently. "He thinks he has the upper hand. He won't pass up an opportunity to reel in another victim." As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows lengthened and then I saw him. Earl, the same sinister smile plastered across his face, approached with an air of arrogance. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at me to run, but I stood my ground. Just as I was about to make contact, I noticed something strange.
Earl glanced around, his demeanor shifting, almost as if he sensed something was off. My heart raced as I watched him turn, his eyes scanning the area like a predator on the hunt. "Where are the others?" he asked, feigning casualness. "Just me," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "You said you had a job for me." "I can always find a job for someone like you," he sneered, his eyes narrowing. Before I could react, he spun on his heel and bolted into the woods. "Mark!" I yelled, but it was too late. Earl was gone, slipping through the trees like smoke. Panic surged through me. "He's getting away. We have to go after him." The officers scrambled to follow, but as they chased after Earl, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. This wasn't over. The hunt had just begun, and I was determined not to let him slip through my fingers again. The barn loomed in front of me, a shadowy specter of my shattered hopes. I had returned to the scene of the crime, a place where laughter had turned to screams and dreams had been snuffed out like a candle in a storm. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside, the heavy wooden door creaking ominously behind me. The air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of decay lingered in the corners. I could almost hear the echoes of Tom's terrified voice, his cries for help reverberating in my mind. "Jake," I whispered into the darkness, but only silence answered me. I had set up the hidden camera earlier, a small device I had managed to procure in my frantic quest for justice. I was determined to catch Earl in the act, to expose him for the monster he truly was. The thought of confronting him sent a shiver down my spine, but I couldn't allow fear to paralyze me. I had to do this for Tom. Suddenly, the barn door swung open violently, and there he was, Earl, his twisted smile stretching across his face like a grotesque mask. Well, if it isn't my favorite little survivor," he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "Did you miss me?" "Where's Tom?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "What have you done to him?" Earl chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. "Oh, you're worried about your friend? How sweet. But you see, Jake, it's not about him anymore. It's about you." He stepped closer, and I instinctively backed away, my pulse quickening as he advanced. "I've been watching you, you know. You're quite the interesting character." "What do you mean?" I stammered, my mind racing.
How could he know so much about me?
Earl tilted his head, feigning innocence. "I've seen your desperation, your need for validation. You thought you could outsmart me, didn't you? But I'm always one step ahead." He gestured to the camera I had hidden among the hay bales. "That little gadget?
Goo.
But I've got enough footage on you to paint a masterpiece." "Stop lying," I shouted, my voice cracking. "You're a monster. You think you can intimidate me? I've already survived you once." Earl's laughter echoed in the barn, a chilling sound that sent a wave of nausea through me. "Oh, you poor thing. Do you think this is a game? I'm not just some random psychopath. I have a purpose, Jake. And you? You're part of it now." "What purpose?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite the terror clawing at my insides. "To create fear," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "To show people how fragile their lives really are. You thought you could find safety in a job offer, but it was all a trap. Just like life, really. People are so willing to trust, to let their guard down. And that's when they fall." I clenched my fists, determination rising within me. I won't let you get away with this. I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. Earl's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. You think you can stop me? You're just a scared little boy playing hero. But let me tell you something. The police are never going to believe you. You're just a survivor and he leaned in closer, his breath foul and rancid. I'm the one who writes the story. Just then, the sound of sirens pierced the night air, and Earl's demeanor shifted. Looks like your friends are here, he sneered. But it's too late. They'll never catch me. Don't you dare run, I shouted, my voice rising in desperation. You're not getting away this time. Earl chuckled darkly, stepping back into the shadows. Oh, but you see, Jake, I always get away. This is my world. You're just living in it. And with that, he vanished into the darkness, leaving me alone in the barn, the weight of my failure crashing down around me. The police arrived moments later, their flashlights sweeping through the barn, but it was too late. Earl was gone, slipping through their fingers like smoke. As they questioned me, my heart raced, the reality of what had just happened settling heavily in my chest. I was traumatized, yes, but I was also determined. This wasn't over. I would find Earl, and I would expose him for the monster he truly was. The screen of my camera flickered, capturing the fading echoes of our confrontation, and as I looked into the eyes of the officers, I knew one thing for certain. The job offer was just the beginning.